about that. The weather was so beautiful yesterday, I almost went out and planted plants, but I didn't because it's not going to be this way forever. Breaking news overnight. It was announced that Toby Keith, dead at 62. Dead at 62. At those terrorists. I mean, that was a great time of great patriotism. And that was, I don't know, that was one of my fondest Toby Keith memories. How about yours, Hannah?
I mean, growing up kind of on the tail end of the 90s country thing, you know, Toby Keith was still really big. Yeah.
John?
And this is one that I saw this morning and I had to fact check because I didn't really believe it at first.
I heard it on the Fox News feed, and I thought, no, it can't be. But then I looked at the picture of him, John, in December of 23. He actually, I guess, did three shows, and he made a joke about never thought I'd be in skinny jeans, something like that.
Wow.
Well, he was a sick pup and had stomach cancer, and that's a bad cancer.
He's only 62.
Only 62 years old.
Should have been a cowboy.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. So, and this is on the heels of the Grammys. It's sort of eerie, isn't it? I mean, big music week and a big music show on Sunday. And I don't know, was he normally in attendance at the Grammys or would he only be the CMA? I don't know. They don't.
Yeah, he was definitely a CMA guy for sure.
Yeah. But they do some country stuff at the Grammys. I don't know. I thought I missed yesterday. John, I heard part of the show. Fabulous job yesterday anchoring the show, sitting in the captain's chair there. Beautiful job, man.
Boy, I don't know. I think we need to get the locks changed personally, but okay.
Yeah. No, there's other reason to get the locks changed. But the Grammys, we actually enjoyed watching the Grammys. We haven't watched them in a while, but we enjoyed them. What was the consensus? I missed yesterday. Did you guys talk about that? I didn't get to hear the whole thing.
We really didn't get that far into it.
We talked about Taylor at the Grammys, but that was about it.
Man, when she said she was going to make a big announcement, remember on her first award when she won the pop album of the year? I thought, oh, man, is she going to make some kind of announcement? She and Travis, man. Oh, I thought it was a little shameless self-promotion to talk about her album that she's coming up with in April, I guess.
Well, she's done this before, though, so it's kind of like tradition, I guess.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. A lot of Swifties were speculating that she was going to be announcing the release of her Taylor's version of her Reputation album, and she even kind of duped everyone with the black and white outfit because that's all like very much a Reputation era themed look. And then she totally surprised everyone by announcing a brand new album. And she said,
skillful marketer she is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, Swifties were doing deep dives before the Grammys into all the hidden clues that Reputation was going to be the new album coming out. There was a big, error page on her website.
Oh.
And the error code, if you rearranged the letters, it said red herring.
Yeah.
Oh,
the best one I saw said that, and this was substantiated by the Swifties, that the next album will feature backup vocalist Brittany Mahomes.
Oh. Well, we were disappointed at her speech, the first speech.
A lot of folks were.
Because she didn't recognize any of her team. She didn't, I thought it was a little, I don't know, that very disappointing to me.
Well, and
I want to be pro-Swift. You understand that, right? I want to be. I want her to succeed. I'm working on helping her succeed.
Folks were also critical. Yeah, I'm sure she really appreciates
she
the
needs
help,
that
Randy.
help. She needs that lift. She needs that. No, but I mean, everyone else there. Who was the Lainey Wilson? Mm-hmm. I was really impressed. She couldn't thank enough people. That was gratitude was a good thing.
I really like Lainey.
And it's interesting. The lower they are on the rungs, it seems like the more humble and the more full of gratitude they are. And then they tend to lose that as they get up. Maybe that's a good life lesson for our children. There's Brian Hauswirth.
There's a prayer called the Litany of Humility. The Litany of Humility. I would encourage people to Google it
and
read it. Litany of Humility.
Wow.
Do you know what that is?
I know what humility is.
It means putting others ahead of yourself.
Yeah. Well, and in that regard, you know what the sermon was this week at church? It was really interesting. It was about the golden rule. It was that part of the Sermon on the Mount. And did you use the same lectionary?
Yep.
We do, yeah. And it was really interesting about doing unto others as you would have them do. I don't know that I didn't realize, Hannah, you won't even, this will be so far out of your universe, you'll go like, what are you old people talking about?
Should I just go grab a snack or something while y'all chat about this?
That would be an idea.
Now, John and Brian, you'll remember this.
Let me settle in here.
But there was a time when at the first day of school, or right around the beginning of school, the local funeral home, maybe the insurance agent, they would pass out rulers. You would get rulers, and it would have the golden rule on it. Do you remember that, John?
I grew up on Air Force bases. They didn't allow stuff like that.
You remember, Brian?
I do.
And you would see the golden
yes.
rule very, very prominent on door headers and things. It was sort of a regular in your head kind of a thing around school. You don't see that anymore.
You just don't. But I do think, like I said, that's kind of a prayerful thing, litany of humility. But it is important. Service to others is important,
yes.
and I think it's important too. And you see that a lot too. I think whether it's the NFL or you'll see it in hockey, you will see it in other sports, college football. A lot of times when they're interviewed afterwards by the sideline reporter and they are the star of the game, they do give credit to it'll be the quarterback. Couldn't have done it with my offense. I think that's important to do. Offensive line, or they might credit their coordinator. Right. I like that.
She did do that with the second speech when she won Album of the Year.
I didn't hear, so I have no idea. So it has nothing to do with her. I didn't hear it, but I do think it's important in general. That's important. I didn't hear her speech.
You don't do anything by yourself. Someone usually has to handle the award, but you don't do anything that successful, that big, that grand without an awful lot of people helping you along the way.
Well, yeah, and she's had enormous success. Again, nothing to do with her.
And she's extremely talented.
And I haven't seen that. Apparently, there was a musician that won some awards but got arrested afterwards. I saw that in news. Again, I have no idea who he is, but
apparently there'd been an altercation. Originally, the rumors were that he was. Who was it?
I have no idea.
Help me here, Hannah. Mike. Rapper Mike. Okay. Killer Mike. He got taken out of the ceremony shortly after getting his awards. It was one of the earlier awards, that they don't show on the main primetime broadcast. And there were rumors that he had gotten into an altercation at the awards, but it was actually
alleged.
It was wrong. It was rumored, alleged, same whatever. And it was actually something he'd had gotten into an altercation off the site. So that was it.
And he took home 3 Grammys. So talk about a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about culture and politics because culture is upstream from politics. It really is. The culture, I think, really, after all, we the people who live daily, the culture that we absorb and we engage in and we are a part of, we elect leaders who I think reflect us, and that's when the politics part of it comes in. And so Helene and I were talking about, there was the songs that we saw. Hannah and I had an interesting text exchange. So I texted Hannah. Well, first of all, there was this song called Vampire, yeah?
By Olivia Rodrigo.
And it was a lot of dark scenes, a lot of dark negativity. She's singing vampire-ish song, I don't know, and blood coming out of the background. They had little, what was it? It was bleeding in the background. It was gross. It was really disturbing. Then there was a guy then there was the gal, what's her name? SZA? SZA. She starts out slashing, she's doing her song in this sort of urban dark scene, and this guy in a tux, I think, comes out and is approaching her, and she slashes him. The rest of the thing is women dressed up in sexy clothes slashing and killing men. And then one of the rappers who won an award was smashing chairs. You didn't. I went back and looked at the 1959. And it was I was going to Kill Bill was the name of that song, Kill Bill. And the lecture, the one of the lyrics is, I just killed my ex-husband and now I'm going to kill his girlfriend. I mean, and so I said, Hannah, what's going on with the culture? Hannah, do you have that song?
Oh, the one I sent you?
You need to send me that one. Hannah in her very smart aleck way, says, "Oh, how about this?" And it was some couple of guys with a ukulele and a mandolin, like from the 50s, the Louvain brothers, talking about killing some gal in the mobile home. It was terrible.
It's called Knoxville Girl.
Knoxville Girl. Of course,
And it's quote, a Appalachian murder ballad.
now, the difference is, I looked that up. In 1959, which was when the first Grammys were awarded, and that's when Witchcraft from Sinatra was nominated. Now, that's taking something sinister, witchcraft, but turning it into a romantic thing. You have me under your spell. It's romantic, you know. Man, I'm sorry. It's just things are so dark and so negative and bloody. And I know rap is, they say it's a reflection of the culture, but man, are there any rappers that are changing their culture through happy rap? Like your Happy Pants? Have you thought about becoming a rapper? Brian?
No, I don't think so. I can't speak for the music, and I don't know the music you're referring to about the vampire and everything. But I will tell you, in our news, and I hope people listen to it. I've sent it to John as well. I am doing a series right now on the new Columbia Youth Center.
Good.
And a couple-part series, and I hope people listen. If it reaches one person, if one person out there that is listening hears it and listens to what these people, then I've accomplished what I'm trying to do and what they're trying to do. But I interviewed Lonnie Lockhart Bay, who is the Destiny of Hope executive director. And Randy, what he said, now he spent time, 26 years in prison. You know that. He's been very open about his case. It's been profiled in the media. But he says flat out, the majority of people living in poverty don't want to live in crime, don't want to live in fear, that they need this, that there's a lot of youth in Columbia and mid-Missouri, they don't know what safety is. So that is...
they have no reference point. They have no North Pole.
That is really sad, and they're trying, and they've got a beautiful facility there that they're really trying to... And my point is, you've got rappers like Nick Danger, and you got people like that are local, that are really trying to, can't speak to these people nationally you're referring to, I have no idea who they are, but Nick Danger, I can tell you, his group is affiliated, they've worked together on some projects, and they have tried to, basically their message is safety and keeping kids out of trouble.
Yep.
So there are a lot of positive things out there.
And I know we talked with Julian Jackman and Tanya Heath.
Yes, he's affiliated with it too.
On our menu today, Chris Arps at 6:35.
I hear you.
It's the Daily DC Rundown. There's a lot to run down. Today, there is a planned floor vote on the Mayorkas impeachment articles. Jonathan Turley, Michael Chertoff, remember him? He was the first Department of Homeland Secretary, Homeland Security Secretary. They both say, there's nothing there. Congress people in charge of that are saying, no, there is. He willfully neglected enforcing the laws of these United States of America. I think it may be a bit of a political ploy, but I think it's probably an effective one given the landscape. You, John?
Fair's fair.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like now that impeachment is becoming a kind of a thing. It started with Clinton. It's getting momentum twice with Trump. And, who knows if it'll just become a regular, along with censure and expulsion from Congress. These are becoming daily events.
See, my issue is I feel like we're trying to impeach too many people, and it's sort of losing its impact, its meaning, almost like the boy who cried wolf.
You need a scorecard to tell the players about.
Yeah.
Well, that too.
And because there's only, a 3, with the resignation of Congress from a couple and Santos gone, there's only a 3-vote majority. And I guess Steve Scalise is out for cancer treatment. One other congressman has said he's a no on it. I think that's Buck. He's a senator.
Yeah.
So it's going to be dicey. But nonetheless, I'm glad the vote will be taken and people will know where their representatives stand. And I think if nothing else, as a political tool to show how these people are willfully neglecting the law and ignoring it, why not? In a related story, the Senate bill seems to be running into trouble even among Republican senators. So I don't even know if it'll make it out of the Senate. If it doesn't, Speaker Mike Johnson unequivocally says, forget about it. Dead on arrival. And when you look at the provisions, you go, I understand. Let's stick a fork in it. Oh, yeah, that's cold. It's rigor mortis. It's dead. The expenditures, $20 billion to address existing operational needs and expand capabilities at our nation's borders. Translation, John, I read that as more, arrest, give them a yellow ticket to show up in court 20 years from now.
And a debit card.
There you go. And a cell phone. And
Governor Parson, after his visit to Eagle Pass, said he's in favor of sending the Missouri National Guard back to the border.
And expanding that. I have some sound on that, in fact. We will cover that. And we'll get into this in depth at 7:10 with Art Arthur. He's a story comes from somewhere in Africa where allegedly Ethiopia, and the coffee tree was discovered. I didn't know. Is this just myth, or is this true? I don't know.
The legend was that Caldy was the goat herd.
Yeah.
Who was watching his goats eating some red berries off a bush, and they got all peppy and started jumping around, and the rest is history.
There you go. Well, let's see if Chris Arps is drinking his Caldy's coffee this morning and peppy like he normally is. Welcome, Chris. Good to talk with you.
Thank you. How am I supposed to top that conversation? Oh, my God. Pressure.
I love those kind of stories, the origins of things that we take so for granted. You don't realize that there was someone somewhere who serendipitously discovered something that changed the world,
The guy who ate the first lobster.
Yeah.
Coffee's one of those drinks to me. It smells great, tastes terrible.
You're not a coffee fan, huh?
No, I'm not. I'm just... And the only way I drink coffee is I have to load it up with sugar and cream and all that stuff.
Same
if
here.
I drink it.
Does that mean I need to go out and buy stock in Monster Energy drink or something? Or?
Actually not. Actually, I'm cutting down on them. You'll be happy to know this as a physician, Dr. Randy Tobler, that I have cut down dramatically on my sugar intake. I don't drink sodas or energy drinks. Yeah. I don't eat Twinkies and Snickers and all that stuff anymore.
Yeah, good.
I'll be 58 this year, so I'm getting up there.
Oh,
see, Chris, every morning when Randy walks into the studio, he has to stop at my little producer's desk and pick up whatever energy drink of choice I have that morning and inspect the ingredients as if I don't know that they're all bad for me.
Well, there's a lot of ingredients going on into the sausage making in the Capitol, Chris. And
what a segue! Wow,
that was good.
I was on you and Tim's program last Tuesday, and we talked a little bit about that. I talked about it with Katie and Tony on Thursday, and I've been in a way carrying a little water for the leadership because they getting beat up by the Freedom Caucus, but I recognize too that things have moved like molasses traditionally in the Senate. In the latest press release from the Freedom Caucus, that pretty much I saw it on Bill Eigel's private page, William Eigel, on his Twitter page, pretty much saying, hey, now last week IP reform, this week we're going to vote on IP reform, education reform. We're not going to pass anything that raises health care taxes. Pretty much acting like leadership. How do you calibrate what's going on in the Senate thus far?
Well, I have to say, the outlook at the beginning was not much was going to get done. There was going to be a bunch of infighting and haggling and going on, which we did have at the beginning of the session, but things seem to have cooled down. In politics, there's a lot of type A personalities, and people, when you have that, there's going to be some infighting and a lot of conflict. But things seem to have settled down, and I'm excited to see what the legislature is going to accomplish this year, especially IP reform and the gambling initiative. That's something that's much needed here in Missouri instead of us giving all our money to Kansas and Illinois and other states.
I wonder, there was Stephanie Bell, who's out on assignment this week. She was commenting about how maybe we'll wish we wouldn't have done IP reform by raising the bar on what it takes for the citizens to get a petition on the ballot. When and if, maybe it's not if, but when the tables are turned. And, the more liberal people, want to get something on the ballot. And, it may be tougher for conservatives to counter with something. What are your thoughts on that?
I just think in the long run, making it more difficult to amend the Constitution is better for everyone. I mean, look, very few people vote. Majorities don't vote hardly anymore. And I just hate to see, our Constitution being changed by out-of-state money that puts in a bunch of money, and they can change the Constitution very easily. Look, if it takes 2/3 of the Senate or 2/3 of Congress in our federal government and 2/3 of the states to change the Constitution, then it should be a little more difficult with the state Constitution. That's just been my view.
Well, and I tend to agree with you. I mean, it's what are there, 119 amendments in our Constitution? I mean, it's crazy. And, we have so few in the federal Constitution for that very reason. When you make something enshrined in the Constitution, it really, ironically, even though you could argue it's too easy for people to get stuff on the ballot that ultimately takes power away from the people, because then the legislature, it's truly an act of Congress to get something done once it's in the Constitution. We see this with marijuana. I think we're going to wish we wouldn't have made it a constitutional amendment.
Exactly. My view really was solidified with the Clean Missouri ballot initiative that had just 3 or 4 or 5 different types of things included in it, which there's only supposed to be one thing in those ballot initiatives. The courts, of course, said that it was okay, and it just bastardized the system to me. So I'd like to see reform. Talking with
Chris Arps at ChristopherArps.com. Now, I want you to listen to what the governor said as he returned home from, along with 25 governors, visiting the Texas border.
Every day. Our mission is to make sure the people of the United States are secure. And for me as governor of Missouri, my job is to make sure that we secure and we take care of the people in this state. So tomorrow, we will start the process of working with the Operation Lone Star to be able to put boots on the ground and be able to help even more than what we already have. We currently have National Guard members in Texas, but we are currently going to do more to help Operation Lone Star.
Boy, this is federalism at its best, isn't it, Chris? Where the governors are just saying, hey, if you feds won't do it, we'll get together and do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the federal government is not enforcing the border. We see the federal government in a disagreement with the state of Texas on allowing these people in. Look, I just read something today before I got on the show here with you about a terrorist was arrested yesterday who the border guards let go. And we know that there are numerous people in this country, we don't know who they are, that are probably terrorists. A lot of the illegal migrants, so-called, are fighting age men, military age men. That's one thing that really frightens me, is that they're setting terror cells in this country, and they're just waiting for the word from someone overseas to enact violence in our country. The border deal that was proposed on Sunday night is absolutely horrible. It does nothing really to stop the stem of illegal immigrants. I'm glad to see that our own 2 senators, Hawley and Schmidt, will probably be against this bill. I'm glad to see Speaker Mike Johnson say that it is dead on arrival in the House. They need to go back to work, because this is not a border deal. It's a de facto almost amnesty.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking with Andrew Arthur from Center for Immigration Studies at 710. You know, talking about that bill, I find it interesting that the Border Patrol Union came out and said, well, you know, this is better than we've had for a long time, so we're in favor of it. Is that because there's, obviously there's more bodies to help them? There must be more money somewhere in there, just in terms of a pay raise or something. I can't figure out why they would be so in favor of this. Is there something I'm missing?
No, and that surprises me, too, because when you watch the national TV shows and you see the Border Patrol's union president, they are adamantly against enforcing the border. They don't seem to be in support of President Biden. So I think you hit it on the nail there, Randy. I think there's probably more money in this bill for border agents, for their salaries. I know that this proposed bill is $118 billion for the border. It says it's for the border, but a lot of that money is for Ukraine and for Israel and for other and for Taiwan as well. So I think you got it right. I think it's probably more money for those agents who are working probably double and triple shifts, trying to keep up with the caseload of all these illegal migrants coming over.
Yeah, perhaps you saw it. The Kellyanne Conway New York Times opinion piece, when she was sort of weighing, okay, what's my choice for president and for vice president, assuming Trump is the nominee, which I think is a safe assumption at this time. And ultimately, she discarded it has to be a woman, or it has to be someone that's a mini Trump, and she landed on it should be a person of color. Your thoughts?
I think that would be a good choice. I don't think that not necessarily my choice. I think he is going to choose a woman for vice president, mainly because abortion is going to be such a hot button issue this fall. And we've seen in polls that the president does not do well with with suburban women, college-educated women. So I think I think a woman will be more likely a choice. Maybe it'll be a woman of color, and then hit two birds with one stone.
You know, she did mention she mentioned Marco Rubio, who I guess is sort of color. I don't know.
I doubt that.
I doubt that.
I couldn't see that
but
at all.
You know who I think is absolutely someone that would get my vote. I mean, immediately. I would. You couldn't get me to the ballot box quick enough. Byron Donalds out of Florida. I love that guy. He's articulate on the matter. He makes the conservative thing sound not so inflammatory. I don't know. I just really am impressed by him. Is there something wrong with me?
No. Byron Donald's a very impressive young man. He's been in Congress, I think, 2 terms now. He is very, very pro-MAGA, so the Trump crowd would love him. He is very articulate. I think he'd be a good choice. I think he's a little inexperienced to be vice president. I'd be a little worried if something happened to an 80-year-old President Trump and a very young, inexperienced Byron Donalds would step up. But I think he has a bright
going to be important, who the vice president pick is. And John, I guess that applies to both sides of the equation, right? Assuming that Joe Biden remains the Democrat nominee. I'm not certain about that.
Yeah, I mean, Kamala's pretty much the shoe-in, you would figure, over there.
Oh, wow, I hope so. I can
Nothing
only
has
hope.
changed, but yeah, like you said, and the Michelle Obama name being batted around even for the big nomination.
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus isn't normally on the VP, right? I mean, yeah, it's a splash in the flash in the pan when it happens, right? But after that, people really don't focus on it too much. But I think it's a bigger deal this time with the age of these two guys, and with the prospects that if either of them are elected, it'll be their last term, and then you're thinking, wow, could we be talking 12 years of one side or the other side of the fence being elected, being in power, and
could be.
As we concentrate more power in this government at the federal level, that's a frightening thought alone that it continues to happen that way. I don't know. 573-874-9390 is the number. Now, Hannah, you said that last night at the city council they passed that ordinance for the VRBOs or Airbnbs. So we'll have to get some details on that and find out what it is they passed. Hauswirth will cover that later. We'll talk about that. What's the story in Jefferson City? Is there a problem there with that kind of a thing in Jefferson City? With the regulation of short-term rentals, John?
I know they a couple years ago they did kind of increase kind of raise the bar on folks with Airbnbs and all. And I think the vast majority of it at the time kind of surrounded nuisances in neighborhoods where, you presumed it was a single family home. And if they Airbnb'd it, you'd just get some, quiet visitors over there. They had some challenges like they do nationally, internationally, with people having big parties at vacation rentals.
Well, and it wasn't local, but a couple summers ago, I stayed at an Airbnb, and the host flat told us when we booked the house that the neighbors really like to find any excuse to call the law on the folks staying at the Airbnb, basically because they didn't like the fact that homeowner was using their house as an Airbnb. So we had to park in very specific spots, and there was sort of like a curfew enforced a little bit. It was pretty strict, and it was just because I guess the neighbors liked to find any little thing they could to call the police on.
Yeah.
I know in Jefferson City, when it was on the books, they put it on, short-term rentals. They have to have a business license, and they also have to charge the 7% lodging tax, too, just like a hotel or motel
Well,
does.
that's the thing. In fairness, I mean, and as Mike Murphy in Como Buzz has pointed out, there is something to be said about essentially them running a business unfettered, unlike other businesses, right? And all of the homes, whether they're residential, all of the real estate in a jurisdiction like a Columbia is under some kind of a zoning ordinance, but somehow those are sort of been floating out in the space without that.
And I know in Jefferson City, short-term rentals are permitted in any kind of zoning.
Really?
Yes.
I guess there would be some demand in Jefferson City if someone was there on some kind of a lobbying mission or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For a while. Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't know. We'll see where it goes, and I'm sure that there'll be some unpacking of exactly what that was. Another story that we will be talking about, and not enough time here, but I think at 7:35 we'll talk about this, because coming up at 7:10 we're going to be unpacking the details on this Senate border bill, and I think it's going to be trouble with Center for Immigration Studies. But you see, Anthony, what's his name, Wilroth, this guy Wilroth, who's sort of an antagonistic little badger here in Columbia. Because the mayor and some council members said something about is it Kanoth? I don't know.
Kanoth,
yeah.
The recall during a meeting, he than Andrew Arthur, who is from the Center for Immigration Studies, former asylum judge, right? Immigration judge, right, Art?
Yeah, that's correct. I was an immigration judge and a congressional staffer, so I've negotiated a lot of bills in my time.
All right, and there's a great piece up, just fresh up on this yesterday evening on the Center for Immigration Studies, folks. If you want to, look further into it, CIS.org, by my guest Andrew Arthur. The good and a lot of bad, you say, in the Senate border deal. Let's start with any good, because most of us look at it and go, where's the good? Can't find any. Let's start and give them a little atta-boy and atta-girl, Kristen Sinema, if that's in order.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that this bill does that's good is it raises the screening standard for migrants who make asylum claims at the southwest border. Probably by now your listeners are familiar with the term called credible fear when aliens show up illegally at the southwest border. We don't determine whether they are eligible for asylum per se, but whether they may be eligible for asylum. And this bill does raise that credible fear standard to a reasonable fear standard. So basically, it's the same screening standard that we would apply to their underlying asylum claims. That's the good. And more or less, that's where the good ends in this bill.
All right. So last night on Jesse Waters, who, of course, is an authority on immigration matters, He made the play that somehow I guess it's in the bill that there's going to be a new group of people called asylum agents or something who are, I guess, going to, in a way, assist this screening procedure, and that they're only going to ask 3 questions. And if the answer is, I'm afraid, from where I came from, the door's open. Is that an overstatement of the truth?
It's an overstatement, but it's not a gross overstatement of the truth. Right now, when Border Patrol agents pick up aliens at the southwest border, they ask them a series of questions. And the last one is there any reason why you wouldn't want to go home? And if they answer that question in the affirmative, they get handed over to asylum officers at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It's important to note, Doctor, that there are only about 770 asylum officers already, and you're talking about 5,000 people per day, so you can do the math and more or less figure out how that goes. But the change in this bill is that right now, all of those people, or nearly all of those people who pass that credible fear screening, go to immigration judges. They go to immigration court, where there's a government attorney to cross-examine the alien and offer impeachment evidence, country conditions evidence, things like that. Under the scheme that this bill would set up, those immigration judges would be replaced by asylum officers who don't even have to be lawyers, and many of them aren't right now. And they would do a non-adversarial interview to determine whether those people have asylum claims. Needless to say, the likelihood that aliens would with bogus or fraudulent claims would get through that system and be granted asylum and, then be put on a path to citizenship with the ability to immigrate their brothers and sisters to this country and nieces and nephews is much higher under that process. And in fact, the Biden administration has attempted to, by regulation, implement a very similar process. A number of states, including, I believe, Missouri, are suing to shut down that regulatory process that the Biden administration has created, in part because it's just shot through with opportunities for fraud. So it doesn't really make any sense whatsoever that at the same time a number of attorneys general, including the attorneys general of Kentucky, where Mitch McConnell's from, and Oklahoma, of course, where Jim Langford is from, would, put this on the table as a new statute. But there you have it.
All right. We're talking with Andrew Arthur from Center for Immigration Studies, an immigration expert, intimately involved in the whole process of this asylum nonsense. In your piece, you say that this doesn't close the loopholes. Family units, you talked about, the chain immigration thing. Now, to me, it appears just on I haven't been able to read the whole bill, the 300 some odd pages. It appears as though this codifies a new normal that is unacceptable from the very start, Andrew. I mean, if you think about it, when Jay Johnson was Obama's Department of Homeland Security secretary, He called 1,000 a day a problem. And this one seems to make it something that the bar is now 5,000 a day on average is acceptable. Langford said, you're not reading this right. Kristen Sinema on the Talking Heads show the other day said the same thing. Who's right here? Is this raising the bar of what's acceptable or not?
Yeah, no, it's definitely raising the bar from what's acceptable, Randy. And let me just quantify this for you because I don't want to make, vague statements without supporting them. In the 14 years prior to Joe Biden taking office, we had an average of about 1,200 aliens encountered at the southwest border every day. Now, there were a couple of years in there where that jumped up to about 2,300. 2019, most famously, is 2,332 per day. This would allow 5,000 people to enter the United States illegally before the president would be forced to shut down the border. Now, keep in mind, the president already has the authority. You hear Mike Johnson talk about this a lot. He already has the authority under Section 212F of the Immigration Nationality Act to shut down the border anytime he wants, for as long as he wants. And there's very little that anybody can do about it. The president won't use that authority. So, for some reason, Congress has given him, a brand new authority at that 5,000 level to shut things down. 5,000 people is 1.825 million aliens per year, or 1.83 during a leap year. So, that'll really give you an idea of, how many people this would countenance entering the United States illegally. Legally, Randy, we only allow about 1 million people in per year with green cards. Of course, we get about 188 million non-immigrants, visitors and things like that. But those people who could stay permanently, it's just about 1 million. This would almost double the number of people, who could enter illegally compared to the number who are allowed to enter legally.
We heard about how these people who are, I guess, given credible asylum claim status, will be monitored. I mean, rather than just set loose and, here's a yellow ticket, come back to your court date 5 years from now. We hear about in some of the reporting ankle bracelets and so forth. Is that real, or is that, again, just something that people are making up?
So with respect to adults who get released after making asylum, we'll just call them asylum claims just to make it simple. Those people are subject to alternatives to detention. Now, at times that is ankle bracelets, but in most cases that is simply, call-in monitoring. Much like if you get released on probation, you got to call into your probation officer. That's really the sort of non-incarceration detention that this bill calls for. And remember, Randy, the current law is all of those people are supposed to be detained. It's because the Biden administration has refused to comply with that detention standard that, Congress is, forced to act, basically justifying bad behavior. The Biden administration has behaved so badly for the last 3 years that we're basically giving them and the aliens a benefit. So that's probably the best way to think about what's going on here.
Now, in the times we've talked before, I continue to look at this situation and I liken it to a problem from the very get-go. We seem to be always discussing about how are we going to handle these asylum claims? I mean, is economic asylum a legitimate thing? I keep asking that. And apparently, some people say yes, some people. But then you look at what Abbott is doing, and by putting razor wire on top of shipping containers, it's a moot point. They just don't come in. And I was telling my wife the other day, it was warming up, and all of a sudden I was seeing these little Asian beetles coming in because I hadn't sprayed the perimeter of my window frames with the right pesticide. And I was thinking, is there any kind of enforcement? And I know they're putting a little bit towards a wall, but is it within current law or jurisdiction to just not even encounter an agent except at ports of entry and just, keep them from crossing the Rio Grande in the first place and saying, bye-bye, turn around? Or is that a pipe dream that I have?
No, in fact, that is the law. The Secretary of Homeland Security is under two separate mandates, one in the Immigration Nationality Act, one in the Secure Fence Act of 2006, which, by the way, Senator Joe Biden voted for, that requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to prevent the entry of illegal aliens. And deterrence is the rule. Deterrence is the directive, the mandate of Border Patrol. But unfortunately, ever since Joe Biden took office, the Biden administration has prevented Border Patrol agents from deterring aliens from entering the United States illegally. When you see that concertina wire barrier along the southwest border that Texas has put up, the reason that they put it up is to deter people from crossing illegally. Official Biden administration policy is if you have an asylum claim, you're supposed to go to the ports, which is exactly what that razor wire does in Eagle Pass, Texas, which is what you're referring to. Look, you can cross at the ports. Texas isn't going to do anything to you. You can't cross the river illegally. And yet at the same time, this is the official Biden administration policy. As you know, the Biden administration is suing Texas to remove that razor wire barrier down in Eagle Pass, Maverick County, Texas. So, yeah, none of this makes sense. The Biden administration speaks out of both sides of its mouth, and the president does, too, when he's like, if you just give me this authority, I'll secure the border. Well, no, we don't have to do that. We don't negotiate with terrorists or hostage takers in this country. We force people to do their jobs. Part of the impeachment that's going on of Secretary Mayorkas in the House, which is exceptional at the same time this negotiation is going on, is that the secretary has refused to do that. In fact, that is the basis of it. The courts have said you can't come to the courts to force the secretary to enforce the law. If you want to force him to enforce the law, you can either shut down the government or impeach the secretary. They've chosen to impeach the secretary.
What's the president's authority as it now stands to use either the National Guard or the armed forces to secure the border?
Well, honestly, so, as commander-in-chief, the president has long sent troops to the border to monitor the border. They don't have the ability to arrest anybody. They don't have arrest authority. But, so long as we have Border Patrol agents out there who are free to do their jobs, they can prevent those people from coming into the country. And if need be, we can send, other federal officers down there who do have that arrest authority. Texas is helping out by arresting people. Texas state troopers are peace officers under Texas law, and they can arrest people who enter the United States illegally as well. And CBP is grateful for their help no matter what you hear. But, yeah, I mean, the president has all the tools that he needs in order to secure the border, Randy. What he doesn't have is the will to secure the border, and Congress can't actually legislate will. So, instead they've attempted to, come up with this Rube Goldberg machine that will supposedly make things better. It's actually going to make it harder for a future administration, be it Donald Trump or Nikki Haley or anybody else who comes next, to enforce the border, to use those tools that the president already has.
Wow, man, I'm going to take this as an endorsement of the dead on arrival, mandate. I think that's what we just need to keep repeating, Andrew. There's no doubt about it. There's just nothing in here except just a little nibble of something improvement-wise. But like you say, we don't want to hand tie these people that already have the authority to do what they need to do. It's crazy. Hey, folks, look at Andrew's article at CIS.org. My guest, Andrew Arthur. It's a great unpacking of the very complex bill. It doesn't need to be that way, right, Art? you, John. Thank
Suck
you, John.
up.
Gotta make me look bad, don't you, buddy?
Pretty much.
So it is possible, just saying.
I know. I hit it once so far this last month. Got it
Yeah.
once or twice.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. It's a work
You
in
have
progress.
plenty of time. Plenty of time.
It's a work in progress. That's all right.
Gold star for trying.
Okay.
We are going way back in time
Yep.
for today's story.
Mhm.
Back to 1908, the early 1900s. And that is when Miss Edith Cesarelli, I'm probably saying that wrong, was born. And what's important about Miss Edith is that she's still alive. And she is celebrating her 116th birthday
You're
this
not
coming
kidding.
Monday. I'm not kidding. She's
Wow.
the oldest person
Holy cow.
in the United States.
Wow.
And they're planning a big parade for her. I guess in her town, they do this every year, and I think that's really sweet. She was excited to find out that the cake at her party was going to be carrot cake,
Wow.
but 116.
Oldest person living. Look at this.
Yeah.
Have they asked?
1908. That is when this woman was born. Can you imagine, just think about all the things that she has seen in her lifetime?
She lived independently, it says Wikipedia, until she turned 107, suffers from dementia, but was able to walk with a walker till 114th birthday. Wow. Where was she born?
Willits, California,
Yes.
Oh,
up north of the Bay Area.
And that is where she currently is still living, which is kind of cool. To live in the same town your whole life, especially when your whole life is that long.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It is. She seems to still be in great spirits. I have always kind of said I'm not sure I want to live to be 100 years old or whatever, because a lot of time your quality of life goes way down. But she seems to be in good spirits still.
so I'm looking here at a group called the Gerontology Research Group.
Are you fascinated medically?
Yes, slow and ultimately reverse age-related decline. But I can't see that there's a lot of medical news on here. I was just yesterday asking my wife if we should In case you're just joining us, we've been talking about some of the news this morning. I'm really saddened by Toby Keith's death. The guy had a great voice. How many iconic songs? Just really a legend. And John, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to particular stars and the things they do. I mean, if a song catches my thank you, Hannah. I was so lost. I have readers. Hannah brings in my readers. Thank you. But man, one after another, Toby Keith had hit after hit after hit, and he's dead at age 62, stomach cancer.
He was a hit-making machine from the get-go.
Hannah was playing Want to Talk About You, Want to Talk About Me. What a great song. That's a little bit of a life lesson in prose and music, isn't it? Wow.
Should have been a cowboy, man. They went right out of the box, went to number one and all that.
Red Solo Cup.
There you go.
I just remembered Red Cup, but Hannah reminds me it's Red Solo Cup.
I had to laugh about that one a little bit.
Well, I wanted to make sure that like Dixie wasn't a sponsor, because if Solo Dixie, we don't want to step on other sponsors' toes. And then of course the song right after 9/11, we played that right at the top of the show. So there was shaking our fists of red, white, and blue. Yeah.
Big thing that stood out with me for Toby Keith all that time was back. Gosh, I don't know how long it was, where the Dixie Chicks went after George W. Bush, and man, Toby Keith came out with guns blazing in no uncertain terms and told them to, what.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
We're forgetting one of the most important songs.
Yes.
Beer for My Horses.
Beer for My Horses. Speaking of which, there's going to be a Budweiser commercial. Wait a minute. There's going to be a Budweiser.
Randall. We've talked about this.
Turn off the ringer.
Randall.
Turn off. See, now, this is the new. Hannah is like my second mom. I mean, now it's Randall. Budweiser apparently is really pushing back and becoming very traditional in the upcoming Super Bowl ad. So you can see it online, but that'll be good to see, won't it, Brian? I'll be glad to see that.
I grew up in an era where the ad that did very well it's called "Here Comes the King." Now, Scott Fawn will know what that is. I hope most people do. But "Here Comes the King" was the traditional, "Here comes the king, here comes the big number one." It's phenomenal. Jerry Mumphrey was out in the outfield. I remember when they first played it, so that tells you how long ago it's been, probably 1978. But that did very well. And they also had a song, I'd love to see him back, that came out in 1970. And it was a group of singers. When you say Bud, and it was a female lead singer, and then a bunch of people ran out. I don't know if you remember a 60-second commercial. Guy was playing the drum. It was incredible.
When you say Bud, you've said it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the one guy looks like Jerry Seinfeld that comes running out of the audience, but it's extremely well done. I prefer the more traditional ads. I like those. I think those ads would do well today.
I think they need to bring back the frogs.
The frogs
are very popular.
I'll tell you, the one that sticks out in my mind that I see this, I don't know why, I see it in my mind's eye periodically, and that is the Clydesdale after 9/11 taking a knee and making tribute to America. I just thought, wow, it sends chills up your spine.
Well, and speaking of 9/11, the iconic photo of President Bush with a firefighter, they're standing kind of on top of a little pile of rubble from 9/11. That firefighter has passed away either yesterday or today. He's 91.
That's when Bush said, I hear you, the world hears you, the nation hears you, and the people that did this will hear from us.
Completely, Hannah's absolutely right. Passed away yesterday. Completely, that was a completely spontaneous, that was not planned. Here's what happened on that, and I read a detailed account last night. It was on it was a New York station that did the story, something I had never heard before. And this firefighter was retired, rushed to the scene. He was 69. He found a pumper that was covered up, and just a lot of retired firefighters were there because they lost so many. And he said that they had gotten word that somebody important would be visiting and was standing on top of the fire truck looking out. And Karl Rove, he had heard of an important person was come by. Karl Rove saw him and said, "Is this safe?" Well, Karl Rove, of course, was his political director, President Bush. And Karl Rove apparently told him, You will introduce the president, then you will step down from the fire truck. And Beckwith, 91 years old. So anyway, he did introduce him, and then this Beckwith was trying to step down.
Yeah.
And President Bush said, "Where are you going? Where are you going?"
Yeah.
And he said in front of everybody, "Well, I was told I need to step down." President Bush said, No, you stay up here. So Bush kept him up there.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Man.
I mean, that is just absolute. And he was 69 years old. And apparently he and President Bush stayed in touch together.
Yeah.
That was a very powerful moment.
His name was Bob Beckwith, and he was a career firefighter out of Queens, out of a ladder company there, and had, like Brian said, had just retired. And when he saw what happened, he made it to ground zero.
Absolutely.
Cancer is in the news this morning with
skin
King
cancer,
Charles
too.
having
Yes.
an incidental cancer found during the workup for benign, reportedly prostatic hypertrophy, enlargement of the prostate. And, of course, Toby Keith succumbing to stomach cancer. And so many of those firefighters developed problems having worked in that environment, and either cancer or autoimmune problems, toxic exposure.
And not just at ground zero. That's a real issue in the fire service.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the time.
And John Stewart, say what you want. Some of our audience may not be fans of his, but he and Bill O'Reilly used to go at it a lot. But the one thing I do remember them agreeing on is this very issue that you talked about. All these, and Stewart took a picture of all these firefighters. This was after 9/11. And a couple of years ago, I remember he did a follow-up on one of his shows, and almost none of those firefighters were still alive.
Yeah.
They didn't die in the attack, but they died of almost all
That's
of them
right.
from cancer. Just terrible.
Yeah. Tell us what happened at the Columbia City Council last night, Brian Hauswirth.
A couple things. Number one, I think the sweeping regulations of the short-term rentals like Airbnb and Vrbo would probably be the biggest thing last night. We knew it was coming, Randy. They've been working on this since 2018. Essentially, it doesn't take effect now. It's important to note it'll take effect on June the 1st. But in other words, if you come into town and stay at a Airbnb or a Vrbo, you're going to have to pay that 5% lodging tax that hotels pay. So that is there. Betsy Peters recused herself. She was on with Mike Murphy and Al Germond on Sunday. And it was contentious at times. She recused herself, and it ended up passing 5-1. Don Waterman cast the lone no vote. Gary Nolan asked a lot of questions about the LGBTQ issue. That was first read last night. Important. We'll cover it more extensively, and I've certainly had that in the news. That is first read. It's a bill. It's more of a resolution type, if you will. 4 pages. I linked to it on the website. It's a first reading. But I think the bigger thing for me is the IBM building on Lamone Industrial Drive. IBM was that was a big deal when Bob McDavid and Governor Nixon were here in 2010 to announce that. And it came in with a lot of promise and just didn't end up working out as everybody thought. So basically that building is sat down the street from us vacant. It looks phenomenal. I've seen the pictures inside. It's state-of-the-art. Veterans United is going to purchase that from the city for $8.1 million. $8.1 million. Now, there is $710,000 in hail damage to the roof. That was the hail damage on Good Friday of last March that destroyed all the cars in our parking lot. But DeCarlin Seawood points out it's the largest private employer in Columbia. I have people all the time. Well, you guys need to know the exact numbers. What's important for people of employers and employees somewhere. What you folks out there need to know is if it's a private employer, they self-report those numbers. They're not public, barring something if they're seeking tax credits or whatever. So VU self-reported to Ready, because I look at the numbers every year from Columbia Ready, about 3,500 employees. Now, that fluctuates a little bit with retirement. By far, that's the largest private employer. Largest public employer would be the university, followed by MU Healthcare. So it is a big deal. Essentially, it allows VU to retain here. They started with 4 employees in 2002, now the largest private employer in Columbia. I think that's a huge deal.
Have they said what the purpose of that building will be?
DeCarlin Seawood they're going to talk more about it at the next meeting. This is what he's saying, and I couldn't get much more than this. We are excited to partner with Veterans United to provide a first-class facility for their operations, which will enable VU to grow in our community. End of quote. Now, VU they've got facilities all over town. They've got one on Vandiver. There's actually one right across the street from us in the post office building.
Jefferson City.
They've got the Jeff City facility by the, what is that, Big Whiskey's down there, the restaurant. And then you've also got, one over on Forum. So they have, but they're not all together. The big campus is the old State Farm building. So this, I'm assuming they're going to keep. We'll find out more about it when it comes up. They're probably going to keep those, but this gives them an opportunity probably to consolidate a little bit. And the equipment there is state of the art. $8.1 million, has new roof, new gutters. If you saw the pictures, it looks incredible. It was state of the art. It was built to IBM specifications. They just left.
They just split.
They were in town several years. It came in with a lot of fanfare, but just did not work out so well.
In another bit of tech news, Hannah and I were talking off the air about. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, sir.
Talking about some proposal that phone companies are going to do away with hardwired lines.
Didn't they do that a long time ago? No, just me.
I have a hardwired line at the farm because I've got an alarm system set up to it. But I guess you don't need to do that anymore with as long as you have internet, Wi-Fi, you can monitor everything for your cameras and everything that way. So, John, do you have a hardwired phone?
Nope.
I don't know.
Long gone. Got too expensive. That was the main part of it.
One ringy dingy, two ringy dingies. Guess what I found in our move? Buried in one of the many totes as I'm unpacking and moving them around.
Because you are a pack rat.
But I'm also a nostalgia. There's something about nostalgia. We should talk about nostalgia.
Says every pack rat ever.
Oh, okay. That's a topic. Okay, that we're going to talk.
She didn't call you a hoarder, so it's all good.
It's not a hoard. No, it's nostalgia.
I was trying to be politically correct.
The old rotary phone. I dialed my wife for our first date back in 1975, I believe, junior in high school, on a rotary phone. So it has sentimental meaning. I just think of that. When I look at the rotary phone, I think of my lovely wife and how I was petrified to call her because I was such a loser in high school, such a nerd, and she wasn't. Maybe we'll get her to talk about that someday. No, maybe we won't.
Watch what you wish for, Doctor.
John, what are you going to talk about in a little bit?
I would say reaction to something in his Big Mac, his lawsuit claims. He said after a few bites, he immediately felt like something wasn't right. His throat began to itch and swell and had to be rushed to a New York hospital where he got treatment. They said, fortunately, he did not need to be intubated. Turns out that he had asked for no cheese because he had a dairy allergy.
Oh.
The McDonald's in question, on a weird note, is owned by Bruce Cawley. That's the guy who was accused of breaking up Andrew Cuomo's marriage.
Oh, wow.
Now you know the rest of that. 2 all beef patties and special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to go the same way as I dumped the 2 hot McDonald's coffee in my lap.
Repeatedly.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you remember in the reaction to the hot coffee in the lap lawsuit and all the fanfare about that, how in many places you couldn't get hot coffee? I mean, people overreacted in some restaurants. I remember that.
That was the deal. At McDonald's, they were people were getting lukewarm coffee and coming back in the place going, come on, guys.
I know. Come on. What are you talking about here? If you can't manage the coffee, for crying out loud, that's on the customer. We seem to be in that kind of a time in our society where we're supposed to protect everyone from themselves. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility, Hannah, for me to protect you from yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of McDonald's Big Macs, anyone been to McDonald's recently and seen their new menu item?
No.
They came out with like a double Big Mac.
Uh-oh.
So everywhere there's a patty on a traditional Big Mac, there's now 2.
Oh, wow. And it's only $14.82 a la carte, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. But I couldn't believe that. We have a friend that lives in Australia who was in the States for the first time for our wedding, and he really enjoyed our Big Macs. So, we sent it to him. We're like, you're going to have to come back to the States and try a double Big Mac, I guess.
Does McDonald's do the same thing with their products that, for instance, you can buy White Castles frozen, I think Taco Bell, you can buy some of their stuff frozen. Does McDonald's do that? I haven't seen it.
I've never seen it.
I haven't either.
What other chains do that? White
Lots
Castle?
of them.
Taco Bell does it.
Applebee's, I know, does. You
Yeah.
can find there's a TGI Fridays. They've got a whole line.
Okay.
Bob Evans.
Evans does. Wonder if Golden Corral does it. We'll have to ask Hauswirth.
He'd know.
Can you freeze a whole smorgasbord though? I don't know. I don't know if you could do that.
Big enough freezer.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not much of a fast food guy because even though most fast food restaurants they'll have a salad or they'll have something that's reasonably calorically priced. You know what I mean? I'm weakened. Man, the will just weakens when I'm standing there and there's all the really good, fattening, off the limits by my wife's standard stuff. I can't. It's just, man.
Kind of like you and me and Jordan J at the food drive eating our fancy catfish nuggets.
Oh, those were so good. I forget the name of that. But, we had catfish nuggets right out there.
Didn't you even eat one off the ground? Or was that Kevin Hilly?
Hilly will eat anything off the ground. He called us once when we were talking about the leftover food after the tailgate things, and Brian Hansen keeps ribbing me about that. He's like, hey, there's some stuff left from the Tennessee game back in the refrigerator. And
Yeah. That would
kidding.
be most activist.
I'm trying to get your attention, Hannah.
Sorry, I'm still laughing about our off-air conversation about Google.
Yeah. You know, when I raise a question, John, maybe you're better at this than I, but I'm not as good at developing the right search term to find an immediate at your fingertip answers. And so I was asking, there's a one of our listeners sent us a great text because it's tax season. I want to talk a little bit about that. Sent us a funny comedian bit, a song. And I said, who is that? Because it didn't identify who it was, just a song.
He was panicking a little bit.
And I was, oh my gosh, I don't want to play it without giving attribution. That's not fair. And before I knew it, she says, oh, that's Tim Hawkins. Okay. I'm like, well, how did you do that? I was in the middle of trying to do a Google search, and I was probably 15 keystrokes away, and she had it like that. It's done.
Then he was also talking about a tweet that he wanted to talk about, but he couldn't find it again, and I found the tweet in about 20 seconds.
It's too easy.
How do you do that?
It's too easy.
Google.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
She quora'd it.
Yeah. The Quora did.
This is a serious question, though. What did you guys do before Google? Because I would be lost without it, truthfully.
Be like Brian and have a photographic memory, pretty much.
I just carry around like what's it called? An almanac or whatever.
Big dictionary or something in your hip pocket.
Our minds weren't cluttered with minutia like that, first of all. I mean,
we kind of make it up as we go.
And you
actually that checks out. That sounds about right.
and you depended. No, I mean, I think wouldn't you admit, Hannah, that it does sort of create, I think, acquired ADD, right? I mean, we're all so distracted with all the incoming that you see. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and once a week I get a screen time report on my iPhone. Mm-hmm. It sends me a little notification, and it's a report of how I spent my screen time over that week, and it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, and it's
way too much time.
It's interesting, and I guess it keeps you curious, but by the same token, I find that it's difficult to have a conversation with people these days with any kind of a depth to it and context and discussion about why did the lights go out in the studio just then? Oh, no. John, did you turn off the lights in the studio?
Was not me. I did not lean up against the switch.
What Hannah, are you sending me a message, Hannah?
I did. I cannot control your lights.
Is management sending a message?
I think so.
I'm not kidding. The lights
Trying to
went
cut
out.
the overhead from the sound of it.
This is why you should be watching us on YouTube Live or Facebook Live. You can find us at both places at Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and you would see Randy sitting in the dark.
Now, but this relates
Thank goodness the blinds are open. You can at least see them from the light from the window.
But this relates to a question that Hannah asked me. And was it Stephanie or you or both? One day, I came in it was 4:45, and I had all the lights off in the studio. The only light was from the computer monitor. They asked me, why do you do this? What's wrong with you? They ask me this commonly. What's wrong with? But I said, it helps me focus. I have something about just without any distraction in the room, only what I was looking at. The lights
back
just
on.
came back on. This is very odd.
You
remember
hit the table.
Remember WKRP in Cincinnati and the night jock Venus Flytrap?
Mm-hmm.
And he'd come in and he'd turn all the lights off and he'd crack the mic and say, "Children, time for more music and less Nessman."
That's right. And I will do that at the office sometime. If I'm focusing on a patient's problem, there's a vexing issue, I'm trying to do research, looking at papers, maybe I can't put it together, but it's just symptoms, I will do that. I'll just turn off the lights. And all I have is a little, I picked it up at an antique store up in Des Moines once, and a high-intensity light, sort of a modernistic, it has a counterbalance on the bottom.
Now, wait a second.
Really?
Is this the same thing that you've been making fun of Stephanie for using?
No. No, this is
very different.
A high-intensity lamp. John, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like a desk lamp, or sort of like architects used on their drafting tables.
A desk lamp, and it just focuses you. You don't have distraction. Your eyes don't wander off of what you're focusing on. Your mind doesn't wander. I think it's a real problem in America. Everywhere. I mean, look at kids. Their attention spans are TikTok long.
Now wait a second. I take slight exception to this.
I said kids. I didn't say young women. I said
and
kids.
then you cleared your throat. I know.
No,
what
I
that
just had a
means.
little phlegm, little mucus there.
I think that's real rich coming from you, buddy. How many times have you told me
Yes.
that you think you have undiagnosed ADD?
I just think it's an active mind. I call it an active mind. That's all. It is tax time. One of our listeners.
Look, a bunny.
Squirrel.
One of our that fly on the wall is driving me crazy. One of our listeners sent us this, which I think is sobering on this Monday, as it's not too early to think taxes.
Oh, the government can. The government can. And the government can.
To several different accountants, tax preparers, CPAs, and there were different answers. It was all over the map. And that frightens me, because then doesn't that mean that the IRS has a lot of subjectivity in what they'll accept and what they won't? And if the laws are that vague and the rules are that unclear, it makes you nervous, doesn't it?
Well, I still think it's a load of you-know-what, that the government wants us to give them money, yet they can't calculate for us how much they want.
Yeah.
We have to do the hard part, and then we can potentially get in trouble if we get it wrong. I think that's crap.
Yeah. Well, we went through the business last week. I talked about it, how we had to file, now you have to file if you pay anyone anything. You have to send them a 1099 or get a W something from them.
Yeah, they want to know what's gone into your Venmo, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm troubled by that. And what it does is it taxes productivity, the whole notion of an income tax. I don't get it. Actually, in that sense, a property tax to me is preferable to an income tax.
Really?
Well, yeah, because if you want to be progressive about your taxes, theoretically, those who do better by that standard, by monetary material standards, they have more. Presumably, they make more, unless they're borrowing it all. And therefore, they're paying more, right? Well, that's the way that income tax is founded, right? You pay a higher rate the more you make. But it's more based on consumption. And so that, to me, rather than, man, okay, you made more, I'm going to punish you for it. Yeah, make more, I'm going to take more. There's something that's a disincentive to be successful.
It is. It's like, you're progressive, and here we come. We want more than our share.
Yeah, it just doesn't. And Tennessee proves that. Isn't it Tennessee? They don't have income tax. They probably have robust property taxes, and that's our sales tax. To me, it makes a lot more sense to do that. But that's just me.
Well, and, we got lunch with our friend Scott Fawn from the Missouri Times last week, and he had a great point of all these people say, let's eliminate property tax. Yet nobody seems to have a plan on how to do that, because obviously you have to make up that revenue somewhere. And all the folks, shaking their fist and saying we need to get rid of property tax haven't really produced a plan for how they're going to do that.
My friend Bill Eigel, and he is a friend. Many people think I'm anti-Missouri Freedom Caucus. I'm not. I just think at some point those kind of tactics and the name calling and calling other Republicans rhinos and sort of being obstructionist in a way has its limits of effectiveness. But that's just a tactical disagreement that I think we have. But I agree with a lot of what Bill says. I asked him that question, and he was asked that question at the Gary Nolan Christmas party. And he said there's plenty of money in the state's coffers to make up that difference. The state has surplus, and there are other ways to fund these services for the government.
Well, and I'm not claiming to know the answer either.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that Scott made that point.
Well, just Google it. You'll find the answer.
Okay,
well, that's the whole debate That's the whole debate we've seen with Gary Nolan was one of the guys on the forefront of the whole move to eliminate personal property taxes and the whole idea of a flat tax and all. And they tried to float it through the legislature, and it just kind of, it ends up just kind of laying there.
Yeah, the fair tax is ultimately, I think the fair tax is the very best tax. It's a tax that...
consumption, correct?
It's a consumption. Well, but it taxes the final end line sale of a good, and it embeds it. But that entity, say your ice cream shop for Joe Biden's ice cream cones, normally they pay some kind of a corporate tax or a flow-through tax to their private if they're an LLC. But it takes away the corporate tax, takes away the income tax, and it replaces it with a roughly 23% embedded tax. So your loaf of bread that cost $1 before does now not cost $1.23. It still costs $1, but the corporation, the company, sends 23 cents of that to the government. And you say, well, what about that's going to be regressive on people? But the answer to that is no, because there's what's called a prebate, and based on the number of heads in your household, number of bodies in your household, you get those basic living needs. Now and people will say, who's the government to determine what my basic living needs is? This is going to get me in trouble, but I think one of the problems that we have with people living paycheck to paycheck is some of the basic living needs have been redefined as multiple streaming accounts and cell phone this and whatever that, and things that are probably not essentials, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it's sort of like back to the debate when so many of the states, what are there? I don't know, 9 or 10, like Alaska and Texas and all that don't have a state income tax. That was a big part of the debate when they went that route.
All right. Hey, listen, we have a couple of callers on the line. Let me take them real quick. Okay. Brent, real quick, 20 seconds.
A term for the IRS and the federal government, and it's more prominent every year. It's a legalized mafia.
Okay. I won't disagree with that. Bruce, your thoughts?
Yes, the answer to this isn't that hard. I used to live in Tennessee, and they didn't have state income tax or property tax. They just had a sales tax.
Yeah.
And the sales tax wasn't that much different, about 13%. But they had, just in Nashville, like 120 people a day moving in. Amazon moved a 30,000-person distribution center from New York. That's the answer. The states that are doing it are prospering.
There you go.
Not that hard.
Beautiful. Thanks, Bruce. And that's what I've said to all of our legislators. Just do what the successful states are doing. It's so Back yesterday. Today, the futures are neutral. Not surprising that, everything gets prepackaged and everything is very emotional about these markets. Some news out of Eli Lilly. I know all of you hate pharma, but you love Mounjaro, you love Ozempic, you love those things that help you lose weight, right? Eli Lilly reported fourth quarter revenue and adjusted earnings that topped expectations. There was a launch of a new weight loss drug, Zepbound, and higher prices for the blockbuster diabetes treatment, Mounjaro, and its relatives, which, of course, are standalone weight loss drugs. So we have a love-hate relationship with Big Pharma, don't we? I just think...
We do.
Yeah, I mean, boy, You think about King Charles has cancer. I'll bet he's thankful for pharma and the European version of it. Toby Keith probably lived longer than he would have otherwise without pharma and some of the treatments. So it's easy to hammer them, but, boy, talk about existentially important things that they bring to our life. That's for sure. And Hannah, to circle back around on a story that you brought up, it looks like the landline may be going the way of the dodo bird, right? I don't know. Phone service providers are getting close to phasing out landlines. What are we going to do? How many people still have landlines? AT&T, not canceling it, but none of their customers will lose service in California.
We had a landline growing up, and I remember I thought it was the coolest thing. The caller ID would show up on the TV. You remember that?
Right.
And it would tell you who was calling.
I remember
that was so cool.
Yeah. What about the analog fax machines that many small businesses may have? Hospitals, clinics, doctors' offices? Yeah. We use an e-fax at the office. We just use an e-fax through the electronic medical record. Works pretty well.
I was going to say, do a lot of places still use fax machines?
Oh, dear Hannah. In a while, I forget what we were going to talk about after the, you know what I mean? Does that ever happen to you, John Marsh?
Never.
Yeah. There's so much going on in our world.
I'm getting roasted on the text line.
You're getting roasted on the text? I can't keep up with the text line. It's very active this morning.
It's like, you know how I tongue-in-cheek like to okay boomer you guys every once in a while?
You do? Oh, yeah, tongue-in-cheek.
This is
very serious.
Tongue-in-cheek, right.
This is one of those okay zoomer moments of like me in my youthful ignorance of fax machines and wrongfully assuming that there's not that many left out there. Not many people use them. You know, because I don't use them, so obviously no one else does, right?
You are the
Go
judge.
down the hall to the sales office if you want to see a fax machine.
You are the judge of all things good, righteous, and appropriate, after all.
Of course.
Yeah. So you don't... the fax machine. Do you remember? Speaking of old...
Fax machines are still in use?
Sure they are.
As I'm learning.
I'll bet Brian and John remember that sweet smell of the purple ink
From
way back when on the Mimeo machine. Remember?
Oh, man.
I do remember that.
back in-
There are very few radio news people left. Very few. Probably Mark Slavitt, Kermit, Bob Pretty still around doing some stuff at Missouri Net, helping out, but on us across our wide Missouri. But John and I there's just not many of us left that actually remember the days, John, where it was a typewriter you would have in the newsroom. No computers, no internet. Forget that, folks. This is pre-fax machines. And the AP would print out nonstop behind you, John.
Yep. AP, UPI wires.
All of it.
We had the highway patrol wire. Remember that one, Brian?
Absolutely. And they would print out nonstop, and you'd do the news, and you'd hear, it would sound like Walter Cronkite doing the news, but literally, and you'd have to have just paper, but that's the only way you could get it.
And that's what we had to do. Before you got to put a newscast together, you literally, the phrase was, had to rip down the wire.
That's exactly right. So we have come a long way, no question about that. But there are, Randy, to your question, I covered a Missouri House hearing. Doug Ritchie chaired it, state representative from running for the Senate. He's over Excelsior Springs. This was a couple of years ago. I want to say 2 or 3. I was still at Missouri Net, and very bipartisan on this one. And he wanted to use ARPA money. Basically, the IT infrastructure needed a lot of work in Jefferson City. But there were a number of agencies who actually at the time, this is just a few years ago, were depending on fax machines. Yeah. And the agencies could not communicate with each other. So that was just a few years ago. So I know Commissioner Zellers that you've met has been working on that very hard. His folks, it's just because they're all on, some of them are on different systems. So it's not as easy as one might think, but very important nonetheless.
So Dwayne is on my case about pharma, a laugh out loud emoticon emoji pharma. I have a question for Randy. I think the government is hiding the cure for cancer, but won't let the information get out because they're making too much money off of everyone being sick. Does he think insurance companies, big pharma, and the government is hiding the cure because they are making too much money?
Well, like the story back in the day, if you'll remember, during the oil embargo, the secret 100-mile per gallon carburetor that the manufacturers didn't want to put out.
Yeah, or the perpetual energy machine, like the Atlas Shrugged static electricity, energy machine that no one would let out because it would be the end of profit motives. Look, I know enough good, totally benevolent, biggest heart in the world people that if they knew, researchers and clinicians, if they had the quote cure for cancer, and cancer's many diseases, it's not one disease.
That's right.
It would be out there immediately. The government would not squelch it. Big pharma would not squelch it. There's no way.
And there's so much research being done. I agree with you, Doctor. Research being done right on the Mizzou campus in Columbia and in Jefferson City as well. But you just drive a few miles from here and you walk into the Next Gen facility, and so it's named after Senator Blunt. They have the state-of-the-art equipment. They have researchers. Senator Greg Razor, who listens to our program from Kansas City, Democrat, Mizzou graduate, he has said to me several times, and he said it on the House floor as well when he was a House member, now a senator, he believes that facility, Next Gen, has the capability and will cure cancer, dementia, What else? Heart disease. There were several things. He was that optimistic. He and Sarah Walsh, Republican, bipartisan effort, worked together to bring that facility there. And I hope they're able to do it. But there's Dr. Choi was there that day, Senator Blunt, the Dr. Johnson, Francis Johnson from National Institutes of Health was there. Not heard anything like what this gentleman that texted you is saying, but I hope they do find a cure for it. I think that it would be a huge deal, but they're trying. I can tell you they're trying, and there's so many people that have dementia or other issues, as I well know, that would give anything for that.
In addition to early diagnosis, I think the biggest advance in longevity and survival from cancer, which has just really skyrocketed for most cancers. Stomach cancer, not one of them, killed Toby Keith. Esophageal, stomach cancer, tough ones, along with others, has been the advance that pharma has led, along with basic research at the university level. There are a lot of those private-public partnerships in immunologic agents, biologic agents, and those have just, cancer experts tell me, oncologists tell me, the half-life of cancer, or the growth time, the doubling time, if you will, of cancer information and treatment information is on the order of less than a year now. It's unbelievable.
It is. It's incredible. You're absolutely right. And early detection and the ability to have access to be able to go to a primary doctor early, because if you go when you're starting to have symptoms, it can be too late. Eli Gold, the voice of Alabama Crimson Tide, does an ad on this very topic, and he said, "Don't wait. You don't want to give cancer an early lead." And
That's
of course,
right. It's a good way to put it.
Football metaphor, but it means everything like that. Yeah. And the last point I make on it, Randy, Eli Drinkwitz, Dennis Gates, great people, great programs over there. No offense to them, and I'm a huge fan. No offense to the athletic program, but if you look at everything over there, what we forget sometimes about MU is the healthcare. The MU healthcare, they actually have a division of that in the next gen. They just do a great job, not taking anything away from the professors or anything else that goes on, football, basketball, all the great things. But the research they're doing there it's just incredible. And I've toured the facility several times. The Ready Board has met there. I was with Matt McCormick. Dr. Yearwood was there, all the business leaders. We received a detailed briefing about the work they're doing at NextGen. I just hope they're able to make those cures.
Another thing that would make a huge impact, and it costs you very little to nothing to do, and that is to prevent the circumstances which tend to promote cancer growth, and that is the inflammatory lifestyle we lead. That is eating too much of the processed food, not eating enough food that it comes from basically farm-to-table kind of thinking, and exercise along with that. As America's collective diet and exercise go in the wrong direction, you'll see cancer continue to increase. We're seeing a lot of that influence now. And it's going to be a battle against, how we conduct ourselves early in our lives, the ravages that leads to, cardiovascular and cancer. They have really some common threads. But that's where primary care is so important, and the access to it, because it's those relationships in primary care that change people's behavior, addresses the early diabetes, addresses the early hypertension, addresses the early cholesterol problems. I'd rather not have those through lifestyle, but rather than fix them. But if it's a reality, that's where big pharma comes in. Let's be honest about it.
It comes in it affects every one of you listening right now, whether you have diabetes or not, because this gets back to the debate on Medicaid expansion. That's a whole other issue, but it ties right in with it, because the people that support Medicaid expansion will argue, and ended up going to the court, so it really didn't matter. But the governor has funded Medicaid expansion, and it will continue to be funded. But they would argue that if you don't, the people especially on Medicaid, if you don't treat their diabetes or some of the other issues that we all have, whether you're on Medicare or Medicaid or not Medicaid, they would argue if you don't do it, it's going to cost the taxpayers more. So it has been a public policy debate too at the Capitol in Jefferson City. And again, like I said, the courts have ruled. So Medicaid expansion it's the law of the land. They have to follow that because of the court ruling.
I'll open up a can of worms here that we don't have time to discuss, but we should have a serious discussion about the intersection of USDA policy and I know there's a lot of farmers, a lot of ag people living out here listening, and its relationship to our obesity, our chronic disease burden. There's a direct relationship because the USDA policy encourages high density, high caloric density, low nutrition density foods. I would love to see out in mid-Missouri when fall time comes, instead of planting winter wheat, I would love to see brassicas. I would love to see the things that the kale, the Brussels sprouts, the things that grow in the cooled weather that I think could be grown here, and they're much, much healthier for us rather than wheat and corn and beans. Yeah, those provide calories, subsistence, not nutrition. And I wish that we could change it. Not that farmers don't get help and don't get USDA, but in a different way, directed in a healthier direction.
There is a Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture, Randy, that does some of the stuff you're talking about. They have a farmers market. It's huge. It's I believe it's the first Saturday. I've been out there a couple times. Governor's been there. Mayor Buffalo has been there. But they do some of the very things you're doing. There's gardens all over that facility. Yep. It's on West Ash. So there are people trying.
Yeah. And maybe farmers can tell me that the climate here is not hospitable to that. But boy, would I love to see some emphasis on that.
And the traditional, to be fair, because they listen to the commodity groups. I'm talking Don Nicodem over at the Pork Association, Mike Deering, Missouri Cattlemen's Association, Corn Growers Association. I could go down the soybean, Missouri Farm Bureau, the traditional, as I call it, commodity groups in Jefferson City. They've been up here as well today, and they've all been promoting farm to table. They have.
And here's another idea. My wife did her PhD on a different way of raising cattle, grass finished, cattle that never see any corn. They never see any of that. And the fats that are in that meat, the next time she's on, we'll have a discussion about that, are actually very healthy for you, whereas the fats in our well-marbled things that we like that tend to get the corn at the end of their lives, have some health detriment to us, frankly. It's not an either or. I think it's a both and, but it's an interesting policy discussion that I would like to have someday. Maybe we can get an ag professor on to talk about that. Because there is another way of looking at the way we grow our food and how we eat it, and its direct relation to our chronic disease burden. So we'll talk about it sometime. Okay, John says there's no market here for crops other than corn, wheat, and beans. Well, there's always dreaming for another day when maybe it's a little healthier market with healthier goods. John Marsh, that Ashland has an unusual February ballot issue today, right? A no tax rate increase bond issue today?
Yeah, that's what's on the ballot, folks. In Ashland are going to see that. It's a $40 million bond issue involving waterworks and sewage projects. And unfortunately, we don't have the alderman, Stephanie, in with us this morning, but it'll determine if Ashland should combine its waterworks and sewer system revenue bonds. And polls opened until 7 tonight in Ashland. It's the only election today in mid-Missouri.
And I guess there's some no tax rate high school expansion projects as well, right?
That's the way I understand
the School
it, yeah.
Board of Education, Southern Boone Board of Ed has approved. This is a 11.6 million no tax rate increase on. Oh no, that's on the April election. That's for April.
That's for the spring issue.
Okay, that's for the spring one. So this is for infrastructure.
Infrastructure, waterworks, sewage, and all that.
And that kind of stuff is important. Ashland's a really booming area. I mean, as I understand it, I haven't seen stats on it, but it's growing rapidly. We'll have to talk with Stephanie when she returns from her exotic land faraway trip. Is she in some exotic land, Hannah?
Yeah, I think she's in Nepal.
Nepal.
Yeah, I think I heard that
or
too.
Tibet. Which is it? I can't remember.
Tibet, is it Everest? Is it her Everest?
Or maybe it's Tibet's down by the lake.
Tibet. There's a problem though. She's going to have on peaking Mount Everest. She left her energy light here.
Oh boy,
Hannah, I see the energy light here.
How is she going to survive?
I don't know. We'll have to ask her how she does good. We didn't get to talk much about Jerome Powell. That's a little bit of a leftover. I talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to remind everyone that Jerome Powell says there won't be a Fed rate increase. What that's going to do to the markets, I don't know. But I think what it might do to the economy is going to be more interesting because we're seeing a little crack in some of the full-time jobs numbers. It came out last Friday. A lot of part-time jobs are these millions and millions of jobs that have been quote, created to backfill jobs lost. And I'm just thinking, with business owners, small business, even large business, when the word comes down from high that, hey, you're not going to get a break on the borrowing to either expand or sustain or change your business or develop new R&D, I'm just wondering if people are going to continue to hire like they have been, and if those hires are going to continue to be part-time jobs. You mix that with a housing market that's sort of stagnant because all of it. As it runs up to the election, it'll be interesting. They asked Jerome Powell about that on 60 Minutes. And
I saw that.
Yeah, he was very wishy-washy about that. But one thing he was very, very clear on was that he's worried about fiscal sanity in these United States. And I'm just, I don't know where that's all going to end up.
I'll talk to the other 19 governors who sit on the Fed board,
Yeah.
Because some of them come from different places. I mean, obviously... Well, we talked to the economist, Tom Kruckmeyer, former state economist, and his take on it was, the unemployment rate's really good in Missouri, but stand by on the interest rates. It doesn't look like it's going to happen even in May, much less next month when the rumors flew around.
Yeah, so maybe we'd be looking at midsummer or early summer, June, July. Who knows? So May. I don't know. Hannah, what you got left over?
Well, I'm trying to find the article on this. But Fox News on the Chiron here in the studio a few minutes ago said Biden was maybe rolling out a new plan for student loan forgiveness.
Oh, no. For the love of Pete.
So I'm hoping I didn't get clickbaited.